Podcasting from the Sound of Freedom studio, welcome to Local Politics. I am so excited to have one of my favorite mayors on. Maybe number two.
I'm your buddy. Number two.
Maybe. Yeah, well,
you just said
Ralph is.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding,
I
Mayor
love Ralph.
Daley. Yeah, I'm just kidding. So today we have Mayor Robb Erickson with the City of Garden Ridge on. I love it. So we're back in the studio. Mayor Erickson, I have a lot of questions for you about where you're from and how you got to Texas and some stuff. But I think the most appropriate place for us to start today is I met you having a beer.
Yes.
We wyou
Speaking
started
of beer,
for
do we have any here?
well, Mayor Boyle drank it all.
Yeah, I think we got a couple.
Yeah. He'll get a kick out of that. But no, seriously, you started in Garden Ridge when you were elected. Something that I thought was a really cool idea because you don't have a big restaurant selection. Working on it. Yes. So you started the first Fridays, and that's still ongoing. That'll be going, I assume, as soon as the weather gets started again. But these guys get together. They have a couple beers and now margaritas, right? From Chewy's here in Selma. We appreciate that. So Mayor Daley and I have been over there several times, and we've been over there with Melvin, John, and all different kinds of guests that
we
appear.
miss you when you guys don't show up.
Yeah. So tell me about First Friday. What was the idea behind all that?
Well, hold on. Let me interrupt. You gotta give the guy a chance.
Jason Setzer's coming off the top rope.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, already with the
Currently Setzer.
Currently Setzer.
I'll tag in.
What? There we go. Give us the elevator pitch. Who you are, what you do, and who you do it
sorry.
to.
I'm Robb Erickson, and I live in Garden Ridge, and I was back in 2017. I heard that maybe some people. I heard that Nadine Knaus wasn't going to run for mayor again, and nobody had stood up to that I knew of to run. Mm-hmm. And so I went actually and sought out a friend of mine. Larry Thompson, who was on council at that time in Place 5. And I met him at City Hall, and he goes, "What are you doing here, Rob?" And we had known each other from back after we moved to Garden Ridge back in 2012. And our dog got out, and he and his wife, Kanani, were driving the Garden Ridge Citizens Police golf cart. It was a car around town. And he sees me and my wife, Megan, frantic on the street trying to find our dog, Buddy. And he stops and says, "Hey, can I help you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we lost our dog, and he's somewhere around here." Long story longer, he and Kanani help us find Buddy, and Buddy jumps in the car with him, and we save Buddy. And then we start a conversation. It turns out he's a retired colonel, fighter pilot in the Air Force, and I was still in the Air Force at that time as a fighter pilot. So we got to be acquaintances and friends. So I ran into Larry at City Hall and told him why I was there. And hey, no one's running. And he goes, "Well, actually, I'm thinking about running. But are you interested in?" I wasn't going to run against him at that time. And he goes, "Are you interested in maybe serving on council?" And I said, "Well, I'm interested in volunteering and serving my city. You bet." Mm-hmm. And he goes, "Well, look into that. See if that's something that you want to do." And I was just recently retired. So as a retired guy, you can be, even as a government employee, which I am now, you can be a council member as long as you're not affiliated with a party. Mm-hmm. So as long as you're nonpartisan, as a GS employee, government service employee, I can serve my city. And so next thing I find out, I'm one of a council member that was currently serving Shelby trial in Place 2, was having some health issues and wanted to step back at the time, and also wanted to do a lot of volunteer work for the city, which he did and still does a tremendous amount. Yeah. And the council appointed me to council Place 2, and I served for 2 years, and then I took a break because my daughter was going to be a senior in high school. And as Kevin can attest to, being on council is a lot of work. There's a lot of homework.
Not in Selma.
Yeah, well, most cities,
Most
right?
cities, most
yeah,
cities.
right. Yeah, no, there is.
Tom Daly tells you what you
Yeah,
need to do, right?
right.
In Selma. So, but it's a lot. It's a lot of homework. It's a lot of research, and it's at least 30 meetings in the evening for a year. And I didn't want to be away from Maggie's senior year if I didn't have to be too much. And so I decided not to run in 2019. I took a break and then decided to run in 2021. And so, coming up on 2 years as the mayor, it's the greatest. Like Kevin, I've said this to you before. It's the greatest gig I've ever had, which is saying a lot because I flew fighters in the Air Force for 25 years. So, and flying fighters is awesome, and serving in the Air Force is awesome. But getting to be the mayor is just so much fun, so much fun. So that tells you a little bit about me and how I got to be the mayor. So I'm from Salt Lake City, Utah originally, born and raised there. Wanted to go to the Air Force Academy.
How did
Jason has a question?
Yeah, Salt Lake City to
It's
Texas.
in Utah. You've seen it before. You've seen pictures.
I've rode through there on my Harley.
So there you go.
And I know that
beautiful.
determining what time of year you go, you can or can't ride.
Yeah.
See, we're the envy down here in South Texas. We got year-round riding.
Yeah.
It gets a little cold, sometimes a little wet, but you can ride all year. So Salt Lake City to Texas, I guess that's the Army brought, or the Air Force brought you here. How'd you get to Texas?
Yeah. So my parents weren't military, but I have a lot of military in the family. My Uncle Gino, went to the Air Force Academy and graduated from there in 1977. He was my hero, still is. And I went to that graduation, and I wanted to be just like Uncle Gino. So coming out of high school, I applied to the academy, didn't get in. So I went to the University of Utah for a year and got really good grades and got my SATs and my ACTs up, right, and got accepted by the skin of my teeth that second try. So went to the Air Force Academy in the summer of 1987, and last time I lived in Utah was then. I graduated from the academy in 91, went to pilot training in Columbus, Mississippi, 93. Then Phoenix, Arizona, Luke Air Force Base in the F-16. Met my wife, Megan, there. She came in as a brand new second lieutenant.
In Arizona, Phoenix?
Yeah. And then we went to Tyndall Air Force Base in the F-15, then Langley, which is Hampton, Virginia, by Norfolk, just north of Norfolk, then Kadena Air Base in Okinawa, Japan, which was great. Our daughter, Maggie, was born in Okinawa. And then Megan and I joined. We were both active duty, but our next assignment was in Vegas. And then I got picked up to go to school with the Air Force. And so I was going to drop my wife off in Vegas and then go to school in Montgomery, Alabama for a year. And we wanted to continue to serve, but we didn't want to be separated geographically if we didn't need to. So we both got hired in the Oregon Air National Guard. I was a line instructor pilot for the F-15C. That's the schoolhouse for that jet out there. And Megan got hired as the wing executive officer, and we were there for about 10 years. And then wanted something a little bit bigger, and we and more opportunities for our kids as they were growing up. Our son John William, he goes by Judge. Kevin's heard me talk about him at our meetings.
Talking about the Judge.
The Judge, number 25 on the football team.
Yeah, legendary football player at Davenport.
Yeah.
How many kids do you have?
Two. So Maggie and Judge.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we heard about this place called Texas, right? And I wasn't born here, but we got here as soon as possible, right? That's what we talk about. And
we forgive you.
yeah.
Well, and
Well, yeah, you're in plant too. Shit.
Wait,
I forgive you.
I've been here.
I got to finish though. I got to finish.
Of course, 20 years. Yeah.
So, so we got out here, and I got to Randolph Air Force Base and have been there ever since. My wife was hired by the Texas Air National Guard, and she is the mission support group commander down at Kelly Field with the Texas Air National Guard wing down there, the 149th Fighter Wing. They fly F-16s down there. And I retired from the Air Force in 2016, took 6 months off, and then became a civilian simulator instructor for the same squadron that I flew with before I retired. So I've been doing that, and that's a great job. Love teaching, and I teach young fighter pilots coming from pilot training in the Air Force on their way to fly their fighters. So all over the world and all over the country. It's a really cool gig.
How it seems like, because the news and everything else, it seems like flying an actual plane is going to be a thing of the past.
Jason, don't ever say that again. That's terrible.
So do you? Do y'all? Is there any talk? Is there any talk about that internally about drone pilots versus the actual?
You need to play the audience going, no.
Oh, no. I've got one. Let's see here. Let's see if I can find it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, no, it's too bad, right? Because there's this in society right now. There's a very, there's a traditional is great and modern and new is great. You know what I mean? It's finding a place for both is the challenge. You know what I mean? There's a need for that. You know what I mean? In 20 years, when everybody's a drone pilot, and then and I'm just talking out of my ass, really, but in 20 years, when there's nothing but drone pilots, and there's going to be a need for somebody to be actually in the damn thing, you're going to have to get people from retirement and be like, hey,
yeah. So there is as a fighter pilot, I always want the fighter pilot and the pilots out there. So whether we're flying fighters or airlift or tankers or whatever, we need the human element and the decision makers up there to augment, if you will, the more the drones. So I think what you're going to see is, as time goes on, you'll see an F-22 or an F-35 fighter pilot, and that pilot will have 2, maybe 4 drones
next to them
that are missile mules, what we call that have the missiles or bombs on board. And then the fighter pilot or the pilot on board will direct where those missiles need to go and interface through a sensor fusion machine on board the jet. So that's where we're headed. But I don't think that it'll be a long time before you eliminate the human factor.
Sure.
Especially
as it should be.
Combat.
You don't want, especially in combat, right? You don't want it to remove the human element out of that, because then it's just numbers and. Anyways, I can get off on my little soapbox here.
I wanted to talk about the beer, and so I meet Mayor Erickson. He gets elected, right? And he's like, "Hey, we're having this party in Garden Ridge. Why don't you show up?" Kelly's coming. I think Kelly. You said Kelly was coming. Kelly Smith. Now Councilman Kelly Smith, and he said, "Hey, why don't you guys come on over?" And I said, "All right." So I called Daly and I said, "Hey, let's meet at the Blue Bonnet, and we'll it's 2 miles, I think 3 miles maybe. Tops, probably, if that." So we went over there and hung out, and then it's grown. And can you tell us about that, or why'd you start it, or you have this guy playing guitar now, and all this
Paul Duke,
Paul Duke,
Paul Duke. Yeah. So in the Air Force, so a standard Robb Erickson story. You asked me a question, and I'm going to give you this big old dissertation on how we got there, and eventually, hopefully, I come back to it. My kids can't stand it, but
So the question was beer. Let me write that down.
Question's beer, but First Friday, right?
Yeah,
so,
First Friday.
So First Friday is a tradition in the United States Air Force. For me, it was in fighter squadrons, right? That you get together as families on the first Friday of every month in the Heritage Room, the bar, whatever, on the first Friday that you're not deployed, right? And you're all together. We'll bring in dinner. We'll cook burgers, whatever, hot dogs, and you bring in your wives, your spouses, and your kids, and you all have fun together. So that's First Friday, and then the other Fridays usually there's a roll call, which we all kind of get together as pilots and talk about the week and maybe have a few beverages and whatnot. So, but First Friday is reserved for the families. It's a gathering time. So I thought, hey, why don't we bring that to Garden Ridge? And I think our first one was June of 21. I hadn't been in the seat for less than a month, right? So, and we started at Paul Davis Park, and it's just, hey, bring your families, walk, drive. And the Erickson family, back then, we said, hey, we'll provide the adult beverages. Audi North Park through Lisa Swint and Todd Vagey who's the general manager at Audi North Park. They sponsored the drinks and a lot of the food and some of the food trucks that would come in. And we've kept it going. The following has grown. You've seen it grow, Kevin, right?
Absolutely.
So, and it's not hundreds of people getting together. It's just families with their pets, their kids, strollers, bigger kids. Judge will bring a soccer ball and they'll play kickball and the baseball diamond there. And we have a great time. So our next one is a week from this Friday the 3rd, from 5 to 7 at Paul Davis Park, which is the geographic center of Garden Ridge. And Paul Duke plays live music for us, which is awesome, volunteers his time. And again, there's adult beverages. It's a Valentine's Day theme, so we're going to write Valentine's cards for our local retirement center.
Nice.
So, and just have some fellowship and get together. And the council comes out and people can come and talk to their elected officials. Hey, Mayor, what are you doing here? Why are we doing this? Or nice. It's a place where people can gather in Garden Ridge and in a relaxed atmosphere with their elected officials and just talk about stuff.
In the first year, 2 years of being mayor, what's like the one thing that surprised you the most, or the one thing you didn't realize? What can you expect if you want to run for mayor?
One of the things that so elections are a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as you go, oh man, I don't want to campaign and do all those things, it's a good exercise for a candidate to go through. And the reason why is because you have to do your homework. You think you know how things work in your local city, or what you're going to be overseeing in your position that you're running for. You think you know, but you don't. And you need to jump in with both feet. You need to dive in underwater and study and really ask yourself where you stand on certain issues. So we were talking earlier about, noise and whatnot. So where do you stand in the city on that position? So it forces you as a candidate to really study and think about the issue so that you can formulate your own opinion. And then when asked about that, hopefully have some sort of logical answer that people can follow and not too difficult, right? So that's what I discovered in running for mayor, is that exercise to be ready to assume that position if the voters chose you to do that. So, which is a huge responsibility as well. And you don't really think of, I wasn't thinking about the responsibility when I filed as much to the level that I needed to be ready for. So going through that campaign 2 years ago prepared me to do that. Another thing that an election does for a candidate is it prepares you, but you appreciate the position more so, right? So I was appointed to council back in 2017, and I loved it. I had a great time on council and learning how a city operates and how it runs and the importance of doing your homework. But going through the campaign to run for mayor really prepared me much better for the position, obviously, with the background and the study and meeting people. So through your meet and greets or however you do that, really trying to connect with people and ask them, hey, what's important to you in the city of Garden Ridge? So another thing about elections, not specifically with my election, but in watching elections, is it brings out, it accentuates the true nature of somebody, if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah.
So if someone is, you go, I'm not really sure about them. I'm not really sure that they'll run a clean campaign, that that they're a really good person. That can come out in an election. You've probably witnessed that before, right, Kevin? I'm sure you have. So if you are a pretty good person, like Kevin or Ralph, right, Tom Daly, Mary Dennis, all of our friends from Northeast Partnership.
You regressed a little there.
they're great people, and that campaign process will accentuate, usually from my experience, will accentuate who that person really is. So that's one of the things I learned. Go ahead. Sorry.
Mayor, I that is the truest thing I think ever said in this room.
There was, and I don't even know, I'm probably going to take this out, but like there was a couple of people that was running for mayor that had absolutely zero experience in politics across the board. And I was thinking to myself, man, I don't think that you are a good fit to be mayor because you just don't, you don't know what the role does. You don't know what the role is capable of.
Right.
Kara Latimer, she said it really well. She was like, I don't know, I don't even have a vote. The mayor of Cibolo, we wouldn't even have a vote. So all of that I just said, what do you think? How can we say that without saying required? Is there a way to say that?
I think the question is to what extent do you think it's helpful that people serve on committees, attend council meetings, understand what the role of the mayor is before just jumping right into running for mayor?
Yeah. So here's how I'll answer that.
I mean, yeah.
So remember, I told the story about walking into the city because I had heard that Mayor Nadine wasn't going to run again, and that no one had come forward to put their name on the ballot. So is that something I can help with? And I had volunteered with the city of Garden Ridge and done things, but I went, man, I have 25 years of Air Force experience, plus the Air Force Academy. Been studying leadership my whole life.
Right.
And command, I've had all this command experience. So what can I do with that? So, and I was very thankful at the time when Larry Thompson goes, hey, actually I'm thinking about running for mayor. I just haven't put my name in the hat yet, but how interested in serving the city are you? Well, very. So I called him Turbo back then. That was his call sign. So from the Air Force. And so I said, Turbo, I'm really excited about that. And he goes, well, and then you guys know the rest of the story about Council Place too. So that experience for 2 years as a councilman was critical to learning and having that experience and learning how a city operates and who does what, who is your go-to person for this, that, not just their job, but
or who doesn't do what.
Yep, there's that too. And here's another
it is
thing.
Government. I mean, I'm sorry.
Yeah, here's another thing that is not unique to Garden Ridge, but Garden Ridge is very big on it and runs on it. Is volunteerism. So, as a council member, I learned who the volunteers are that organize things, and that a lot of times it's the same people over and over again because they volunteer for this, they volunteer for that, and they do great work. But knowing who to go talk to about how to get things done that the city can actually handle or something like that. So I've said a few times in interviews that volunteerism is the lifeblood of Garden Ridge. And literally we couldn't get it done without that. I know the Parks Committee this last year put in well over, I think, 2,500 volunteer hours in the year to do just specifically 2 events, our 4th of July parade and then our Christmas tree lighting in December, those 2 events. But then all the things they do with Paul Davis Park and a couple of our other pocket parks in different neighborhoods, we couldn't get it done without that volunteerism. So that experience that I had on council and then taking a break prepared me much better to fulfill the role as mayor once the election was over and it worked out. So I was much more prepared to do that
with the experience
that experience. So the more experience you have with something like that, the better it's going to be. I'm not saying that you need to be the lieutenant governor or a representative state representative before you run for governor, but those things, any experience you can have with local, state, or federal government before you go different places is a good thing. So,
I'm sure Mayor can tell us about, how much, our staff is everything.
So let me accentuate the answer that I gave you previously to go further with that. So you don't have to have that experience in order to fulfill that job, because you may have leadership experience elsewhere, or you just may be that type of person that can do it. But what's so important, especially in the city of Garden Ridge, because I'll brag on Garden Ridge, is you could have had anybody really coming in to fulfill that role as mayor, because we have such a professional city staff with so much experience that is going to guide that person to what they need to do.
Well-run machine.
Yeah,
Well-oiled.
and Garden Ridge is a well-oiled machine. So, I mean, it runs itself because of the hard work, experience, and knowledge base of our city employees, headed by our city administrator, Nancy Kane, 20 years of experience on the job in Garden Ridge. She's amazing. Our city secretary, Marissa Spencer, she just got her master's degree a couple years ago in public administration. She's a whiz. And everybody in that front office, our entire police department, our public works department, with our utilities that runs the water company, they're the pros.
Yes.
And I get to come in as the mayor with my cowboy hat and go, what can I do now? Go do a podcast. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
All right.
So
Well,
it's that they do the hard work.
Surrounding
Yeah.
yourself with good people is never a bad thing usually.
but you want hungry professionals that want to work hard and stay there and try to work their way up the chain or something. Obviously, that's the desired people to hire. But it would have been nice to get a year or two out of Scott.
Oh, yeah.
So you still have 3 police officer openings?
We have 2 at the moment.
And you can go on to gardenridge.com
Yeah.
or tx.com or whatever it is and apply for those jobs if you're looking for a job in law
Absolutely.
enforcement.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, with that, I was actually going to ask a question about that, but we're a little halfway in, and
That was a great way to end that segment. That was big news, man.
It's time.
It's good.
It's time for
Is it the lightning round?
all these
Kevin's
buttons
putting on
over
his
here.
glasses.
So pick a color:
One of my choices I can't really see.
black, green, blue, or red.
Blue.
Blue.
Of course, Air Force.
Yep. So I'm gonna shuffle these up for Kevin. This has nothing to do with politics.
Yay.
This is completely random. They're not about anything. Entrepreneurs, politics, health. They're not about anything. Just as random as can be. And Kevin is going to ask you 3, 4, 5. He's going to ask you 5 of these things. You answer them however you want, if you want to answer them at all. And just remember, you pick the deck.
What's something people would never guess about you?
Oh. Until they get to know me, I'm very sentimental. So when it comes to family or anything with my kids, I get choked up easily.
Yeah.
So I think one of the jokes at City Hall when we're having meetings, if I start talking about the kids or something like that, I mean, I immediately will have to pause and take a break.
Yeah.
And Marissa gives me a hard time about it. So does Lisa Swint all the time. So
you're a big teddy bear.
I am a big teddy bear.
It's a scary place sometimes to be in your own head, or emotionally it can be. So flying fighter planes, you don't have a lot of time to, when you're up doing that, to be too emotional, right? Your mind's somewhere else, so it helps take your mind out. Or like me when I do fly, when I'm fly fishing, I'm so focused. Otherwise,
Right.
yeah, because I'm an emotional guy too, definitely.
One of the things I want to keep going with that, so sentimental, but also with your kids or your family, you're so invested and you're all in with that. So whether it's pride or joy or even sadness, that if you're all in with something, that can affect you. And I Maggie, my daughter, said this to me just yesterday. I wear my emotions on my sleeve. So, but like with the oath to run as the mayor again,
Yeah.
and the privilege of that and the responsibility, and when you say something like, hey, I'm going to support the Constitution of the United States, the laws of Texas, and the laws of the city of Garden Ridge to my utmost ability, I mean, that sinks in, and I believe in that. I'm all in with that, and I'm just awed at that unique opportunity and the privilege to be able to go, I'm in the position, I'm going to run again. I'm not done. I want to keep going, and I believe so much in it. So I'm not going to get choked up. But
that's what makes you a great mayor. Do you
that's-
think we could push him a little bit?
Oh, I don't think you'd have to push him at all.
Yeah, I mean,
Just let him keep talking. He's nearly there now.
Next question.
all right.
I'm all in.
This one won't get you teared up, hopefully. What's the worst pickup line you've ever heard or dished out?
Well, there's one of the funniest ones I've ever heard. I didn't use this that I know of or remember was, hey, here's my library card. Why are you showing that to me? Because I want to check you out, right? So,
Wow.
Here's my worst pickup line ever, and it's true. So, it was the 18th of July, Monday, 1994, and I was at Luke Air Force.
Left an impression.
It was 11:55 in the morning. So I was at Luke Air Force Base in Phoenix, Arizona. We talked about that a long time ago. Seems like a long time ago. And I was going to the protocol officer's office for the base to take her to lunch. Trish and I were friends, and so I was going to go take Trish to lunch. It's a lunch date that we set up, and so I walk in my flight suit, and I had heard about this new second lieutenant on base, this blonde-haired, blue-eyed second lieutenant named Megan Howe, and my roommate specifically said, Robbie, because he called me Robbie, you stay away from her. I get first dibs of trying to ask her out. I'm like, whatever, Murch. His name was Jim Merchant. Great dude. So whatever, Murch. Yeah, got it. So I walk into the protocol office, and who is sitting at the front desk that morning in her Air Force blue uniform with beautiful blonde hair and this smile and blue eyes and second lieutenant bars on her shoulders. And here I am in my flight suit, this fighter pilot, and I walk in, and she's like, "Can I help you?" And what I thought I said was, "Hey, what's going on? I'm here to take Trish to lunch, and would you like to join us? How you doing?" And what I think Megan jokes, she's like, "I don't know what you said, but I think what I actually said was I just started drooling on myself, going, hi, it's Trish in?" So,
Time kind of stopped, and,
yeah, so Jason's like, "Dude, you talk too much."
No, it's good.
it's nice. Otherwise, I have to listen to Jason more. So, what's the dumbest way you've been injured?
Well, let's tell a fighter pilot story, shall we?
Yeah.
Okay, so there I was. That's how those all began, right?
No shit, there I was.
No shit, there I was. When it's cold, so doesn't even have to be the wintertime, but when you fly over cold water, if it's below, 70 degrees ambient air temperature and the water is below, 65, I forget what the number is. If you're going to go fly out over the water, you got to wear a poopy suit. And a poopy suit is a green, the color of a green olive drab flight suit. It's kind of that color, but it's a anti-exposure dry suit. So not a wetsuit. So it is, and it's one of the most uncomfortable things you could ever wear, let alone wear and fly a fighter jet in for hours at a time. So
Was it like a big sauna suit?
Wait, no, I got like a dry suit for like scuba diving.
yeah, no, that's exactly what
And
it
you're
is.
flying a jet in those?
Yeah. So, no, it's to give you another 5 minutes. It's like if you punch out, so eject over the water, and you somehow make it into your little life raft that was attached to you after you eject and float down, then that dry suit is going to prevent hypothermia for another 5 minutes for you to contemplate your death as you get into the raft to go, yeah, I am really cold. I'm still cold, and I can get to think about being cold and hypothermia for a little bit longer while I wait to be rescued, hopefully. So
That's got to be colder than 65 degrees, though, huh?
No, 65 is really cold. I grew up in Lake
cold, yeah.
Superior, and when
Yeah.
it got up to 65, we'd go swimming in it, but it'd be like 5 minutes and you're out. I got hypothermia one day, and it was
Wow.
95 degrees out. And I was a kid. I was in the lake, and I came home. My parents put me in a bath and wrapped me in blankets. I mean, it was something else.
Sounds like a movie. So
Poopy suit.
Well, it's only 5
we
feet
call it a
offshore,
poopy
but
suit.
I mean, yeah.
So it's got so it's a big anti-exposure suit, and it serves a great purpose, right? Because it is going to it's going to prevent hypothermia. Postpone it for a little while longer to help you get into your little raft to hopefully contact somebody on your radio, right? That you got to find. So, and you get into it with, you step into it through it zips right here. You've seen those huge scuba diving zippers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you step into it, and then it's got rubber here, rubber around your leg. No, it's booties around your legs. And then you put the thing over your neck, and it's this rubber seal that goes around your neck that chokes you.
You're flying in this.
Eventually, yeah. And then you zip that up with it. It takes another person to zip. You got to do your arms like this, and then they zip it across for you. Only like 5 guys I've ever met in my life can do it by themselves. And then you squat down and you open up the seal, so you get all the air out, and you vacuum it to you to get all the air out, because you need to do that in order to move. Then you put on all your stuff, like your G suit, your harness, your boots, and then you put on the other stuff to go fly. So now you're
the tape player on the leg.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah. If you could fit it anywhere, and then you sit
Iron
in the
Man,
cockpit,
baby, or-
yeah.
They got a little bottle
Iron
of
Eagle.
sunscreen on there for your nose.
That's right. So anyway, I'm in the cockpit, and it's bulky, and I'm trying to move around, and it's really, really hard to move in that thing. So there was a radar switch as I was flying that I needed to adjust, but it's way back here, and it's really hard to get to because I also had my jacket on, because it was so cold outside in Southern Oregon, and I'm flying out over the coast. Got my jacket on, I've got gloves on, and I'm trying to reach back here to flip this switch. And dude, I can't reach it, but I got to make sure I've got the right one, because if I do another switch, I could shut down motors and stuff like that. And that's usually a bad
Switch
thing.
fuel tanks
Yeah,
or something.
so-
There's, you never know.
Do this, and I look, and I finally go, yeah, I think that's there. And I'm trying to reach it, and I'm really doing this. And all of a sudden I felt right in here in my scapula, this tink. I felt something just literally break. And I'm like, I know that the pain is going to hit me here, but I can't let it do anything because I'm flying the jet, right? So, and I'm a single seat fighter pilot, so I'm the only one in the cockpit. I can't afford to be
Hurt.
incapacitated. So and it started to hurt, and I'm just like, okay, just keep the pain away, completed the mission, because you got to get it done, right? And then came in and landed, somehow got out of the jet with help of my wonderful crew chief, and went through the debrief, went back home, and then the pain set in. And sure enough, I had torn a ligament, and it had snapped.
Oh,
It didn't break a bone, but it had snapped, and it was... Once I got home and the adrenaline was gone, and the Tylenol was taking a minute to kick in, the pain set in, and it just went, oh my God, it was incapacitating. So it's still there too. And if I move just right,
Mind you.
oh yeah, it's so painful. So that's the dumbest way I've ever injured
Well,
myself.
the real question on that one is, did you get the switch for the radar?
I did.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
That's what's most important.
did.
Finish the mission. Good.
I did. I finished the mission.
Did you tell anybody that's how you heard it?
I told the flight doc.
Yeah.
And Megan knows the truth on that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
no one else knows that story until now.
Yeah, when I got back, I did a little hike in Oregon. I was wrestling a bear
Yeah.
or some other macho
Well,
story.
anytime I do wrestle bears, it kind of. So I just wrestle them one arm.
Yeah,
right?
just do it one handed.
Yeah,
I was
it's
trying.
easy.
I was taking a leak and I tried to hit the light switch and. All right.
So Jason and I are talking about bears, and you're like, I was taking a leak.
Yeah, you try to hit the light switch and it popped. All right. Anyway, if you could jump into a pool full of something, what would it be?
Okay, I can't necessarily. Okay, can't say my first answer. So,
All right.
Jump into a pool full of anything? I should come up with something profound, right? And it's not working.
Why don't you answer this one, Kevin?
I'd probably jump into a pool full of beer or something, you know?
Yeah.
Whiskey?
Okay, I am going to say something cheesy and not profound, and you guys would be like, come on, we were having such a
That's
great
fine.
podcast, but that's the cheesiest answer anybody's ever given. So, but literally what comes to mind is a pool full of great memories that I can go relive. So I would like to go back to the Monday, the 18th of July, 1994.
How do you remember these
11:55.
dates?
That's important stuff, man.
I can't remember.
It impacted me. I want to know what I
It
what I
took
said
me years to remember
Megan.
my kid's birthday. Like it took me several years to remember that.
I have it in my phone under their contacts.
But you don't remember it. That's my thing. Like you got these dates. You're just like a Rolodex. Boom.
It's
May 15, 1904.
But that moment was so important to Rob that's what he remembered.
I have lots of important moments. I don't remember the days. The day my dad died, I got to look it up every time. That's really important for me.
It is.
And like the day my mom died, you know, I'm like, I got a lot of important days. I don't remember that shit. I don't know how you guys do it.
I remember
I've
some.
always been
I'm a
able
little,
to do
I'm a
that.
little jealous of that actually.
Yeah.
So my mom and sister, if they're watching, my family watching this someday, eventually, they'd be like, "Oh yeah," and I totally see that. And that was the cheesiest answer that Rob's ever given. But yeah, I'd like to be able to go back and relive some moments with my dad. I lost my dad in 2015, and not a day goes by that I don't.
How
you
old
know,
was he?
He was 4 days shy of his. Come on, man. So there's my sentimental stuff.
Yeah.
He was 4 days shy of his 71st birthday.
And it was what date?
It
March?
was technically it was the 14th of November, 2015. He actually probably died Friday the 13th of that November, 2015. So
My
of a
dad
heart
died when he
attack.
was 59.
Man, that's young.
All right. Last question
Crazy.
of the lightning round.
That was. a
Would you
little
rather
ignorant.
give up all drinks except for water, or give up eating anything that was cooked in an oven?
See, there's not enough data there for me to make a decision.
that
I
What
don't-
about microwaves?
No, mine's easy. So if it's cooked in an oven, because you can grill most of that
Yeah,
stuff.
I'm saying
you could
microwave,
air fry
bye-bye
it, pan fry it, grill,
And
I
then
don't-
was it water?
wood oven.
or give up everything other drink but water. So no
Oh,
whiskey, wine.
See, and that's the other thing too
beer.
is I could get by on water. I know you got to have your beer, but
I see a lot of energy drinks around here sometimes, Jason.
I didn't say I don't only get by on water. I said I
Okay.
could.
Yeah. Well, you could get by on either, but I'm taking the give up whatever using my oven,
Bye-bye oven.
if that's the way that question was. End of the lightning round.
Yeah.
Did you answer it?
Yeah.
I said bye-bye oven.
Bye-bye oven, yeah.
I thought you
All
okay.
right. End of the lightning round. Hit us with the.
Oh man, you got me slipping. All right. What is the one thing you wish you known? One thing you wish you knew before becoming mayor?
Huh. A little bit more of the history of Garden Ridge.
Really?
Yeah. And in that, so there's a great book written by Linda Crosland, who's our librarian. And it's a wonderful book. And it talks about local area history all the way back to how this area was settled, not just Texas, but here. What, the town, the settlement of Davenport, which is what Davenport High School is named for, long before it was ever Garden Ridge. But more of that history that has made us a community, not just in the last 50 years, but the last literally 100 years, somehow how everything was developed here. So, but specifically the history of Garden Ridge and the volunteerism and how we're all connected. All of these people work together to form a city, to name the streets, to elect their first mayor, Paul Davis, and we named our park after him. So a lot more of the history and how connected all of these families are. So Todd Arvidsson is Council Place 4, and his wife, Virginia, they live pretty close to me in Garden Ridge. She graduated from high school in 1987 from Canyon High School, but grew up here in Garden Ridge. And so through Todd and through talking to Virginia, I get to know who owned what tract of land at what time that eventually became what development, and how that process worked, how the third phase of Wildwind development, where I live, was annexed into the city, even though it was technically in San Antonio's ETJ. So just that history that's really important that I have learned through talking with Nancy and everybody and all the volunteers, and then reading Linda's book, so which is great, by the way. Did I answer your question?
You did. You did a very good job.
It was Jason's.
Yeah. Next question.
Next question. What's the biggest mistake you made as mayor?
So as an Air Force officer, a retired colonel, and a fighter pilot, here I've got all this leadership experience through the Air Force Academy in 25 years and all that kind of stuff, blah, blah, blah. And we have since talked about how well oiled the machine of Garden Ridge runs, and what a well oiled machine it is, and how it runs so well, and the people are, and the experience and the knowledge are what keep it going. And you could walk in as Joe Blow off the street, be elected, and the city's still going to operate well, and they're going to train you on what some of the things you need to do as the mayor, and how to run a council meeting, those types of things, which is not an easy thing to do. Mm-hmm. So I mean, that's something you gotta train yourself and be very studied and do your homework. So because you're Johnny on the spot for 3 or 4 hours, right? You're gonna run that meeting. So not knowing, I don't know that it was a mistake. It was just not having the experience of watching them work on a daily basis. As a council member, I'd see it on a weekly basis,
Sure.
but watching it on a daily basis on how it works and how Garden Ridge runs, and the experience and knowledge base of our pros that do it in the city, our employees and our professionals, as well as the volunteers. So it wasn't necessarily a mistake coming in thinking I know more about leadership than these people. I don't. It was not learning, not sitting down and just not saying anything and just taking notes and processing the whole thing from day one of, hey, Nancy, how does this work? What's the history on this? I mean, she can go back 20 years. She is our corporate knowledge in Garden Ridge on how things work and operate. So
a lot of value to retaining good employees.
Huge.
Yeah. Superintendents.
Yep. That's big in the news, right?
Yep.
Did I answer your question,
You
Jason?
did.
Okay, cool.
What's the best advice you ever received?
Well, the first thing that came to mind was from a retired major general in the Army, who went to my church, and he wrote my letter of recommendation to help me get into the Air Force Academy that second try, right? George Holm was his name, and he still scares me to this day. He was an Army 2-star general he looked like this, and I don't think he was a teddy bear inside, but he was a good man. But he said, Rob, on your way to the Air Force Academy and to hopefully a career in the Air Force, from what you've said, and you say you want to go fly fighters. Yes, sir. So that was my dream all along. So keep your own counsel. And as an 18-year-old, I had no idea what he meant by that, but I always remembered it. And it's something that I wish I would have processed a little sooner in my life, not just careers, but in my life, to go to really understand what that means. And, that it's good advice for everybody, especially in the digital social media age, right? To keep your own counsel. And there are times when you need to share your feelings and experiences and take a stand on something, but keep your own counsel. Be careful of what you say and about whom you say it, because you may not be right, That's just you. It could be just your opinion, not based on fact.
Perception.
And it's perception. And why did you say that? So, and that, back then is, hey, why did you say that? Now it's, why did you text that 2 years ago or whatever? Why did you email that? So, so it was keep your own counsel. And then a good friend of mine, his call sign is Cannon. He's also a 2-star general now. He said, Leaf, it is my call sign in the Air Force for Leaf Erickson. So Leaf, never hit send on an email that you don't want to talk to Matt Lauer about on the Today Show tomorrow. So back when,
isn't that the truth?
Yeah, 100%.
In politics, that is the best advice.
So, and I try to adhere to this no matter what. Every time I click or hit send on my phone, hopefully I go back and read it, make sure it's right, and okay, and hit send, because you never know. Savannah Guthrie the next day calling me up, hey, what was this all about? I don't know, right? So
wasn't feeling it.
Yeah.
Whenever it's time for you to leave office in Garden Ridge, what would your definition of success look like upon your exit?
So Megan and I have a philosophy. Leave the campground better than you found it.
Sure.
So, and what does that mean? Are the people that work for the city, are they happy? Are they happier? Are they content? What have we done to make life better in Garden Ridge, our little gem of a city, in the beginning of the Texas Hill Country? What have we done to make that a better place to live? So one of the things that the process that we're going through right now as a city is with just over 5,000 inhabitants, we are pursuing a home rule charter, which for Kevin, you know what that means. That's because Selma is general law type A still, right? Mm-hmm. So we are setting, what I'm trying to help the city do is set itself up for success in the future, because we're surrounded as a general law type A city, with the exception of Selma. We're surrounded on all sides by home rule cities. And a home rule city, a little bit different than a general law type A. General law type A has some great advantages, and it's worked for us for 50 years, right?
Yep.
But there's also some advantages of being home rule and not having to adhere completely to what Austin says. So with a few exceptions. So that's one of the things that we are going to put before the voters on May 6th this year, because they ultimately decide if they want to adopt a home rule charter or not. We've gone through that process, and we'll see what the voters decide. So, Kevin, you look like you have something to say.
Well, no, I was going to follow up. That was going to be like my last question of the podcast, but let's jump into it now. The general law city can only do what the legislature through law allows them to do. And a home rule city, on the other hand, can pass any regulation or laws it deems necessary unless the state prohibits it. So in Selma, for political, not intermediate, Jason here.
Intermediate, I got a raise.
Well,
hey,
you have enough campaign tips to win an election in Santa Clara or something. But just kidding. No, seriously.
Jeff's like, what are you talking
Bring that up to Jeff. See what he thinks about that.
Well, with the change, and I was talking to somebody because in Selma, I've always been cautioned, as long as things are going good, we're best off with the government formation and style we have now. Sure. And so we've always kind of stayed away. So some of the requirements is you guys will have to form a charter then, correct? Yeah. And but with that, the thinking about it, or I guess what's your take on why you pursued this to give it to the voters?
So in studying a home rule city versus a general law type A city, like you just said, under a home rule charter, which is a constitution for a city, right? Mm-hmm. Under a home rule charter, you put the power back in the hands of the registered voters, of the people. So a couple of things that home rule provides the people that live in that city. It provides them the ability to pursue a recall, referendum, initiative, with enacting legislation through not just through an email going, hey, Rob, I think this is a good idea, and we put it on the agenda, which is how we do it right now, right? Which is a great way to do it, and it's how you do it in general law. You get enough people to talk about it. With home rule, it gives the citizens, the residents, the ability to go, you know what? I don't like what that elected official did, allegedly. We're going to pursue a recall, which you can't do general law type A, and hold a general or a special election for that. So it gives them that ability to say, nope, you're done, and off you go. More importantly, that's there, which doesn't exist for general law type A. It's you can enact legislation in your city through initiative and referendum. Well, initiative really. So you get enough people together, and that's, for anywhere from 10% to 20 to 25% of the registered voters that were registered for the last election to come together and sign a petition to enact legislation. You have to put this on the ballot and have to talk about it. Doesn't mean that it's going to pass with the vote of the council, but it's got to be there. And the same thing with a referendum. We don't like that legislation and that ordinance that was just passed. We have 10% or 20, 25%, whatever is written in your home rule charter, of the citizens to come forward with that, and we want you to pull that.
Right.
And then we can reconsider it perhaps in 2 years. So those are three big things. One of the things that's really going to change, it doesn't change the way we do business because it's the way we do business right now. We're going to go from the mayor being the CEO of the city, if you will, under general law type A, to a manager council form of government, which is where the city, our city administrator, if the voters choose this, would turn into a city manager and be kind of the CEO of the city, with the governing body being the elected officials, the council members, with the head of the council being the mayor. So that's not really changing the way we do business at all.
No.
I mean, because Nancy does a fantastic job of doing that already and keeping me as the mayor in the loop, in the know on things that I just need to know, or, hey, we got these issues. Where do you want to go with this? And we working together to keep moving Garden Ridge forward. We've already come up with a draft charter. We appointed a commission of 9 commissioners, our Home Rule Charter Commission. Our first meeting was at the end of November. By the time we finished our Saturday meeting on Saturday, the 12th of January, we had a draft Home Rule Charter ready to go for the voters. That is going to go to council, not for approval, but to have a special election on the same day as the general election for our Home Rule Charter. Council can't touch it. It's already approved by the commission, and it will go on the ballot on May 6th. So before that happens, we have an education process that we need to help the city with, meaning we'll do a town hall meeting. Every registered voter gets a hard copy of the draft charter, so they can see it and read it. And then we'll have plenty of social media and online presence to help educate our residents on the hows and the why, and help them decide if this is a good thing or not. And it's ultimately up to them. So it's a yes or no vote, and the majority wins in that case. So,
which is kind of the way the home rules cities, are kind of more of a majority rule. The like you said, the people have a voice.
Yeah.
There's upsides and downsides to both. And for us in Selma, we're going to stay where we're at right now. But there are some things to me that like caught my eye when I was like, oh my gosh, Garden Ridge is going to do this. But whatever.
We're going to put it to the voters, right?
Right. Yeah. To present this to the voters.
Right.
And that it can be frustrating being a council member if I didn't have the relationship I had with Mayor Daley in Selma, because he's the king.
Yeah.
He could fire Johnny tomorrow and become the new city administrator, right? And once you have a charter, you can't do those things.
The way I view it is, hey, let's give the voters the opportunity to decide what they want to do, for the times when we don't have a council that gets along, right? And you know what I'm talking about.
No, I know,
Kevin,
100%. I know that. Believe me, I've looked at it. So
we'll see what the voters of Garden Ridge. By the way, there's a little over 3,800 registered voters, and we have the highest percentage of voter turnout of anywhere in this area.
Really?
Yeah.
3,800 registered voters. What's your turnout?
So for just a normal election, say, like normal election where just last year it was council members that were on the ballot. We had 27% of registered voters show up. For the May 21 election, I think it was 30.31%. If you get anything above 10, that's a golf clap on your machine. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
For the 2020 election, and that was the general election and presidential election, 87.9% of registered voters turned out in Garden Ridge to vote for that. That's huge.
Yeah.
So Garden Ridge votes.
Turnout is low everywhere. Whenever you're talking percentages, 27% is low. You know what I mean? It might be high considering what's going on in your vicinity. I remember what Jose Macias was saying that out of the 50,000 people that vote that are able to vote, only like 1,200 voted.
Just in his district, yeah.
Just in his district, and that's whenever you're talking about things that those things make an impact in your life,
they do
more than who the president is. You know what I mean? Just a big degree. Anyway, can you speak to the rumors? Of building a wall and having Schertz pay for it.
That's a great idea. How can we do that?
Well, there is the big water tower story, of course, and we need to get Johnny Beerswall in here to tell it, or I need to get him to come over.
The Schertz water tower that's in the city of Garden Ridge.
Yeah. Do you guys get water from that water tower?
No.
Why don't you just take it? Just a hostile takeover, the Ukraine style, like Putin. I mean, just roll in some.
I could.
I'd raise the taxes. I was.
So paint Garden Ridge on the side. And
you probably shouldn't be climbing any ladders with your shoulder.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
So here's the wall.
Yeah.
The wall of Garden Ridge. We have been for 50 years this wonderful place that used to be farther out of town from Schertz and San Antonio and Selma. I mean, you have to drive through the country to get to Garden Ridge. In 50 years, that has changed, right? And so now you have development between Schertz and the Garden Ridge city limits right up to the train tracks, right? Yep. So as we try to, and it's light industrial. I mean, it's light industrial. So, and then you drive into Garden Ridge, and our tagline, our brand is naturally home with Garden Ridge. That you drive through the city, and now, hey, you're in the wooded area at the beginning of the hill country, and here you are. And we want to keep that. So as we try to influence, you can't control the city development, right? You guys know that as well as anybody. But as you influence through planning and zoning your ordinances to influence the type of development you want to go into that undeveloped corridor along 2252 that borders Schertz and Selma, right? How do we do that? So I think someone has said along the lines, hey, well, let's build a wall and we'll get Schertz to pay for it. Because they want to block the noise. But so no, there's no wall. Yeah. But how do we influence that development? Because what we'd like to have, and you've heard this pitch and this spiel before at Mixers, that we want to have Garden Ridge be a destination place to go. So we've thrown out like Green is for us and New Braunfels. Hey, you can get into Green and you're out of the city, but you're still only a mile from it, not even that. So we want higher end restaurants, higher end retail, if we can, to go in there and develop so that 2252 becomes a destination and not just a thoroughfare, if you will. And the other thing that does is we keep that money that we spend as residents in the local area. You can't shop much in Garden Ridge. You got to go to Schertz. You got to go to Cibolo, and that's great.
Selma.
But,
Selma.
And
Yeah.
obviously go to Selma.
Yeah.
So, but what if we can keep that revenue, that tax revenue, and that spending, keep that money within our city limits? So, and there's great things that happen when that happens. I mean, you can recreate in Garden Ridge, and we don't just spend our own money there, and then that raises our tax revenue. We get other people to come in and have a good time in Garden Ridge, get something to eat, do some high-end shopping if we can get that in there. We've talked to Trader Joe's, and I say, hey, that'd be a great place to, Garden Ridge would be a great place for Trader Joe's, and you will eventually have the traffic that you need for that.
Yeah, you got $2 Chuck, $2 bottle of wine.
So, I
like Trader Joe's.
Yeah, and nice restaurants. So at the Mixer, we talked to the owners of 1908, right? Hey, 1972, because it became a city.
So Mayor Robb Erickson, thank you. Thank
Pleasure's
you very
all mine,
much for
guys.
coming on the show and telling us about your family, and hope to have you back. We really appreciate you.
I'd love to come back. I had a great time.
Good.
Thanks. Nice.
Perfect.